So glad to have you with us today. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. Imagine for a moment that your money could talk. MarketWatch is saying that nobody suffers more from inflation than retirees. And right now, our inflation rate is 5.4%. We're at a 13-year high. So your money is likely saying, ooh, it's important to have a plan to make your money last. So exactly what Andrew's going to be talking about today, too. Here's that phone number for you, 800-848-8768. Again, 800-848-8768. We give you this number because you can call Andrew for a complimentary visit or a complimentary phone appointment, either way. And also you can find us online anytime at swan-capital.com. That's swan with a dash, capital 2A's.com. Wealth of great information there. And Andrew, hello again. So great to be here with you today.
Hey, I'm really excited about today's show today.
I am too, because like I said, we're going to be talking about inflation. And I mean, we are seeing such high prices on everything. And my niece just bought a home, and home prices, we all know, are jumping so high. The median home price right now, Andrew, it jumped 23% from last year. It's now about $363,300. That's a median home price. I know.
That's intense.
It is intense. So what does this tell you about the economy as far as people trying to retire here?
Well, I think luckily here on the Gulf Coast, I think we'll be insulated. I do think there has to be a plateau. I don't know about a bursting bubble, but there has to be a plateau in sight. But we are insulated here on the Gulf Coast. I think people will continually move from various states, especially if they talk about more lockdowns, more restrictions. I think people, the ones that were really, didn't want to leave their town, if they see more lockdowns, I think they'll finally make the big shift.
Yeah. When you think about the very first, do you know how much your parents paid for the first home you guys grew up in?
I think it was a crazy small amount. I think it was like $50,000, if that.
Yeah, I think ours was 40. Honestly, 40,000. Yeah. So anyway, while we're talking about home sales, the housing market is still pretty hot. So let's say baby boomers are thinking about making a move right now. Why there's a strong seller's market. I have a lady in my neighborhood just sold her townhome. She's moving in with her daughter until things settle down, and then she's going to buy in Florida. So what advice do you have for people making a rush decision on something like that?
Well, I think we have to be very careful when you sell one of the biggest items in your financial plan, which is your home. And I think it is a big discussion to have. But many times families are saying, hey, I can sell my house at record prices. But then where do I live?
Right.
I don't want to be in a tent somewhere. I mean, so I want to get the most for my house price. I think the time is for a retiree to downsize. This may be one of the best times because if you can downsize, get the full market appreciation of the home that you've been in for years, and you downsize, yes, you'll be downsizing to a home that is smaller, that'll be more expensive, but you should be able to walk away with really good equity in your home. So again, this is a good time to think about downsizing, and if you find the right deal, maybe even a fixer-upper with some light repairs that needs some lipstick on it, then that would be the perfect home for your retirement years.
So when we talk about inflation, of course, we know it impacts things like interest rates, right? So should we be planning on making changes in interest rates anytime soon?
Interest rates is something we definitely need to keep our eye on. That's why I think you're seeing so many people, even with the price of houses continue to go up and up, you're still seeing a huge demand for those homes, is because interest rates are so low compared to the 70s and 80s when you were talking about buying your first home. Mm-hmm. But that eventually will change. And if inflation gets too high, the Fed will have to raise interest rates in order to spur economic activities such as lending as well as spending. But right now, inflation is around 5.4%. Which Jerome Powell says that is temporary. Now, I've said some controversial statements before, but that even if it's temporary, it still takes its effect. And once prices go up 35%, even if they are temporary, that very rarely do they ever go back to the original price. So I think inflation is something we have to keep our eye on along with interest rates because it does make an impact for that fixed income retiree in retirement.
So this is a lot of information for retirees to be thinking about right now. Inflation, interest rates affect, what our income's going to be in retirement. Tell us how you take your retirees through your Swan Sleep Study plan.
Absolutely. Inside our Swan Sleep Study, we have a category that talks about income strategy. And if you are a fixed income investor, a fixed income retiree that's going to be reliant upon Social Security, if costs are going up double digits, and even if Social Security does raise Social Security by 5-6% this year, but things are going up at double digits, over time you will lose your buying power. And that's a real shame for someone that is reliant upon the federal government. So we have to have an income strategy that's not reliant upon the federal government. And so in our Swan Sleep Study, that's a 1-hour complimentary visit where we walk through your retirement income plan for retirement. Now you may be saying, Andrew, I have statements, but I don't have a retirement income plan. That's where we can come in and help. In that sleep study, we'll answer your questions about Social Security. We'll talk about how do you bridge the gap between your expenses and Social Security, and how do you do that with assets to make sure that you're not totally dependent upon the stock market. So give us a call at 1-800-848-8768. That's 1-800-848-8768.
And then I want to guide you to Andrew's website, too. It's swan-capital.com. They have a beautiful website. Check that out because you can find out even more about Andrew and his team at Swan Capital. They want to help you feel confident that your retirement nest egg is set up strategically for a long, flourishing retirement. So Andrew would love to help you out. Take him up on this phone call, too, and go in and see him complimentary. We thank you so much for joining us. This is What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. All right, so as we're talking about inflation continuing to spike, and you just mentioned it, could lead to a significant boost in Social Security. So listen to this. The Senior Citizens League, it's an advocacy group. It's projecting that based on this year's price hikes, Social Security benefits could be increased by 6.1% by 2022, wow. Right? That's a huge increase, that really the biggest increase since 1983. I'm kind of shocked to hear that. I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's tragedy, and a lot of tragedies can be comical. The government is printing more money to help with its problem of printing too much money. And so it's a real dilemma, is prices are going up so much because of stimuluses and the government's assistance through the COVID pandemic. The problem is now they're having to print more money to take care of the retirees and by increasing Social Security with a cost of living adjustment around 6%. So it's really a downward spiral of inflation. If we're not careful, that's what we could find ourselves in. So again, that's why it's so incredibly important. If you have money that is sitting on the sidelines, quote unquote, money that is sitting in a checking account, a savings account, if you're making 1% and you have inflation that's 3, 4, 5%, we're not only not moving, we're going backwards. And like Will Rogers said, he said, you can be on the right track, but if you don't move, you'll get ran over. And the last thing we want in retirement is to be ran over by inflation.
Yeah. Okay, so explain how you deal with Social Security in your overall retirement income plan that you do with retirees.
Right. When we build a retirement income plan for a family, FDR enacted Social Security for families of American citizens to have Social Security as an appetizer for those families, not the entree. So FDR never imagined that Social Security would be where Americans have the only pension check. He imagined a three-legged stool that, families would have pensions from their employer because they would work for them for 30 years. Then they would have a check from the federal government, and then they would have their investments. That three-legged stool would be solid. The problem is we've taken a hacksaw and been sawing off that no companies are paying pensions anymore. And then we took a hacksaw to the American public, says, no, we're a consumeristic economy, consumeristic culture where we're just going to spend everything we make. And now we only have a pogo stick for a retirement. And that's not what we want. What we need to do is definitely prioritize for your children, your grandchildren, and your family, making sure that we save enough for retirement. And that means sometimes setting aside 20% of your income towards retirement savings.
Andrew, we talk about your income plan that you put together for retirees because you say it's more than just having savings, and like, okay, here's what I saved for retirement. I have a 401k, I have some IRAs and all that. It's more to just having that money. It's an actual plan. Explain what that means, please. Again, I know you've talked about it many a time, but we could have a brand new listener today.
Happy to do so. What we don't want for a plan is hope. Some people say, well, I'm going to save up $1 million, and let's use $1 million because it's an easy round number. I'm going to save up $1 million. I'm going to have enough income with that $1 million in addition to Social Security. Well, if let's say CD rates today are 1% to 2%. 1% to 2% on $1 million is only going to be around $20,000 annually without having to spend through your principal. See, a lot of times we've used this 3 to 4% rule, and some people use the 5% rule that I can live off 5% off my investments. Well, the problem is that 4% rule was created in the 90s when savings rates were 4 or 5%, where the average savings rate was nearly 6% at the time of that idea that you could live off 4% of your interest off your investments and you would never run out of principal and you would have enough money to last you a lifetime. Well, again, every rule of thumb, it sounds good initially, but if you don't have an actual plan that's customized to you, that can start to fall apart when the economics change, which they have. Interest rates on a CD today, I looked at the top 5-year CD from a major institution. It was only paying 0.95% for a $100,000 jumbo CD. And that's a really hard way to retire on $1 million if you're only making 0.95%.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So what we do here at Swan Capital is, first off, we start with a spending plan. We give families a one-page spending plan that shows what you're spending today compared to your income, and then what you're spending in retirement potentially, so that you can draw a comparison and say, actually, a lot of my expenses are going to be the same. Now, a few things are going to change. Maybe I need more for travel. Maybe I need more for health care. But you will be able to see visually on one page how much you need for retirement. And then you'll see how much is coming in from Social Security and pensions. And then that's the gap that we need to bridge. And that's my job at Swan Capital, to help you bridge that gap so that you don't have this swaying bridge depending upon the stock market completely. We want to have money in the stock market, but we don't want all of our money bridging the gap to retirement, swaying in the wind with the stock market. So if you're looking for a retirement income plan, instead of just statements preparing for retirement, give us a call at 1-800-848-8768, and we'll be happy to walk you through our income plan that we build for retirees every day. Again, that's 1-800-848-8768. And if you would like a copy of our spending plan, we try to make it as easy as we can for you. All you have to do is email Andrew@swan-capital.com. That's Andrew@swan-capital.com. And if you email me, someone in my office will be sending you a copy of our spending plan so that you can make sure that you have your expenses documented getting ready for retirement.
And we still have so much more to cover today, so don't go away. This is What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair. You're listening to What Your Money Would Say. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer with Andrew McNair. Andrew is president and CEO at Swan Capital. And if you don't know it, he's appeared on Fox Business News, also Market Watch, all regarding financial planning. Also, he's written articles in Kiplinger's Report. So today, Andrew is sharing with you his wisdom about planning retirement. And he specifically wants to reach out to you and let you know that you can contact him and come in and see him and ask your very own questions about retirement. So have you ever asked yourself that question? I sure wish I knew then what I know now, Andrew.
Too many times. Too many times.
Me too. I think, wow, why didn't I do this when I was younger? Well, a popular post on LinkedIn, you know what LinkedIn is, right? I guess a lot of people responded to this, sharing their words of wisdom that they wish they would have known back in their 20s. So I thought it would be fun to explore that. Andrew, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
You don't have to believe something to be true. I'll just take one for instance. In my walk with Jesus, I didn't understand and accept all of God's commands when I was younger. And because I was immature, I thought I knew better. Mm-hmm. And what I found is just because you don't believe something doesn't mean that it's less true. Like if you don't believe in gravity, but you jump out of a window, it will not hesitate to work because you don't believe in it.
That's a good point. Good example.
Yes.
So, all right, when you were 20, like you just said, whether you knew it or not, you were still laying groundwork, for your future life, and especially even your financial success in life. We do talk a lot about the stages of retirement, but financial planners are saying there's actually 5 financial stages of your life. So I thought we'd examine those, all starting with your early career years,
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah. So your clients have kids or they have grandkids in this first stage that we're talking about. How can they help their next generation find the solid financial footing?
Oh, I wish I could help more younger people. So if you have a pen and paper, this is some of the things that I wish I could tell the younger generation is you need to treat debt like fire. Mm-hmm. You have to respect it or it will burn you. If you get into credit card debt when you're young, you will wish you had it, and it's like putting your hand on a hot stove. You'll still feel the after effects for a long time. Mm-hmm. Second is live within your means. The average American spends 92% of their income on themselves, only saving 6% for their future selves, and then they only give 2% to charity. And so you have to save 20% for retirement. And many people say, well, I thought it was only 10%. I thought it was only 15%. The problem is if you don't save 20%, you'll be just like everyone your neighbors and your friends that complain that they didn't make a high enough investment return. They'll complain that they don't make enough money, that they haven't got a pay raise recently. If you save 20% of your income, you will brute force your way to financial success. The next thing is someone that just gets into the workforce is one of your first career goals is opening a Roth IRA and start max funding it to $500 a month as soon as possible. I mean, $500 a month is really reasonable to ask someone very early in their career. Next is max fund your 401k, because if you're getting a 401k match, but you don't get all the money in your match, that's like getting a check every week from your employer, but then the last 2 weeks of your year, you decide to not let your employer give you a check. You just tell the employer to keep the check. That would be crazy. We would never get all the checks that we're owed from our employer. And that's what it's like when we don't take advantage of a 401k match.
Awesome. Okay, those are great tips. So, all right. So that's all at your beginning of your career, what you need to be doing. Love that. I hope people were taking notes on that. Now, we're done with our early career. Let's say, I'm getting into, starting my family, right? And my career building years, right? You're moving up the ladder.
Certainly.
Tell us about those big financial steps that are happening at that point.
Well, that second stage is there's a lot of big things are happening. I mean, you're settling down, you're potentially starting a family, you're buying your first home, you're adulting, as they like to call it, big time. Yeah. And you're starting to recognize that you need to protect some of the things that you're starting to accumulate, and you protect your family finances. So here's a few things that, again, if you're in that stage from maybe 30s to 40s that you definitely want to take advantage of, make sure that you address, is first is buying life insurance. When you start your family, when you get married, when you have your first child, the last thing you want to do is to pass away immaturely and not have any group term at your employer to protect your family in the unexpected situation that you get disabled or you pass away. The next is you need to make sure that you have health insurance. I know that's basic. You've been on your parents' plan for all those years and you're about to switch off. You don't want to go the cheap route on health insurance. There's many things you want to go cheap on, you want to be frugal on, but health insurance is probably nothing that you want to toy around with, because when you need it, you definitely need it. The next thing is building your career further and maybe even starting your own business on the side. And again, America was built on small businesses. Now, the problem is we've really glorified the hustle and the grind. I don't think people should start a business unless they're weekend business that does not impact their day-to-day week job, their day job, if you start that weekend job and you start making more than your day-to-day job, then you can separate. Some people think you have to make this big leap of faith in business. That's not usually how any business has actually started. Usually started in someone's trunk. Swan Capital started in my Camry of my trunk. So again, great businesses start small and then they get bigger over time. Now, if you're listening and you say, that's me, Andrew, I'm somewhere between my 20s and my 40s, and I want to get back on track. We've put together a really nice resource that really helps you understand the importance of saving and saving now. And what I've done is I took someone that had a $50,000 income that was investing at 8%, and it shows you the difference for someone that decides to save only 5% versus 20% of their income. It also shows you if you started at age 20 versus if you waited and procrastinated till age 35, and the results are drastic. To get a copy of that chart that is really revealing, all you have to do is go to whatyourmoneywouldSay.com/save more. And this is a perfect piece to give your grandchildren and your children. I mean, many times when you try to give advice to your kids, they think you're just griping and that you're just trying to tell them, again, one more thing, like, make your bed. And they have all these memories of trying to make their bed. So instead, let me do the hard work. Give them a copy of this chart. So go to whatyourmoneywouldSay.com/save more.
And we want to thank you so much for listening. This is What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair. Andrew is president and CEO at Swan Capital. He has over 15 years of experience. And, of course, he and his team are innovative in helping you find solutions so you can live well during your retirement years. We thank you so much for joining us. This is What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair. All right, we're talking right now about the 5 financial stages of life. You probably all kind of know it, that you go through these stages, but we're kind of identifying them. So do you work with people in these first 2 stages of retirement?
Luann, that's a great question. The answer is no. We do not work with people in the accumulation phase. It's a very important phase, but we specialize in the distribution phase when people are 5 to 10 years out from retirement. However, many clients say, will you please meet with my grandchild? Will you please meet with my child? And I make the promise to always be available and at least have a little bit of time on my calendar every week to meet with young individuals. And I'll meet with them. It doesn't mean that we'll take them on as a client, but we will meet with them. And what I'll do is I'll give them a long list of homework. I'll pat them on the back and say, you're doing really good in this area, but these areas you definitely need to do better. And I'll give them a whole list of homework items to take care of. I'll give them a couple list of books that they need to read, and I'll be a resource for them because I wish I could have more time to meet with young people. I could actually do the most help for young people, but unfortunately, until people are actually ready for the teacher doesn't arrive, as the old fable says.
So how do we find that right financial advisor for the current stage of life that we're in?
I think what's really important is you have to interview at least 3 to 4 financial advisors. Think about it like you're interviewing the most important CFO position in your company. You would not just pick the first person you met. You wouldn't just hear from someone, a neighbor says you should go see someone, and then you would just hire them on the spot. No, you would interview them. 3 or 4 people. And we've tried to make it really easy by providing you the 7 questions to ask a financial advisor. And even if you already have a financial advisor, these 7 questions are very important to read over to make sure that you're getting the most complete advice that you can for your family. Because the only person that loses out is the client. If you miss out on taking advantage of a tax strategy, a financial strategy, or an estate planning strategy, it's typically not the financial advisor that loses out. It's you that loses out financially. So to get a copy of the 7 questions to ask a financial advisor, this is an article I wrote years ago because I've done this since I was 14, and someone asked me, what questions should I be asking? And I thought, that's a great question. Let me come up with those 7 questions. So to get a copy of that, all you have to do is Google Andrew McNair interviewing a financial advisor. If you Google Andrew McNair interviewing a financial advisor, it'll give you all the 7 questions to ask a financial advisor before selecting one or to make sure you're with the right one.
Oh, I love that. Andrew McNair interviewing a financial advisor, the questions you need to be asking your advisor. Just Google that. Thank you for that, Andrew. Okay. So is it ever too early? I already know this answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Can it ever be too early to start thinking about retirement?
Well, the answer is absolutely not. There is definitely too late to start saving for retirement, to start building that retirement plan. But, again, I just sat down, sadly, with a 60-year-old that is only a few weeks from retirement, and they've saved $150,000, which is great, but with their Social Security of $2,000 and no pensions, and they wanted $5,000 to live comfortably, the numbers just didn't add up. And the problem is when you're 60 years old, we only have 5 years, max a decade, before we have to be ready for retirement, before our health tells us we're ready for retirement. So if you want to make sure that you're on track and not wait till you're age 60 to know if you're on track or off track, let me give you a formula. And it's a really good formula to write down. It's age times income equals X divided by 10. And this is a formula that I took from the book, a really good book, The Millionaire Mind. It's your age times income equals X divided by 10. I'll give you an example. If you're 30 and you made $100,000 as a household between you and your spouse, that is how much? That is, again, $3 million. If you divide that by 10, that's $300,000. So at 30, you should have about $300,000 saved if you make $100,000. And you might say, Andrew, I am way off track. I don't have that kind of money. That's great. Today you can change course. Today you can get back on track. If you're on track, you're pretty close to that, you can give yourself a pat on the back, but keep it up. And so that's the formula that I would encourage you to utilize if you're listening today. Now, if you're thinking, Andrew, I'm so off track, what do I do? That's why we have our Swan Sleep Study. It's a 1-hour complimentary visit where we sit down one-on-one to answer all the questions that you can muster about your finances. And then one section of that sleep study, and there's many sections. We talk about estate planning, tax planning, income strategy. One part's called a savings and accumulation. And that's where I give you and your family a grade based on your income, based on what you've saved to this point. Are you on track? And people say, Andrew, I don't want to see and come in and see that I have a C or a B in that category. I already know I have that one. What's so empowering is when you know that you're off track, I can tell you how much you need to save to get back on track. So to take advantage of that 1-hour visit, all you have to do is call 1-800-848-8768. That's 1-800-848-8768. And that resource, again, to learn how much you need to be saving is whatyourmoneywouldSay.com/save more.
Your pre-retirement years are where the most financial critical decisions are made. And we're going to tackle some of those coming up next with Andrew. So don't go away. This is What Your Money Would Say. Hi, you're listening to What Your Money Would Say. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Andrew McNair. He is president and CEO at Swan Capital. And he has offices in Pensacola and Daphne, Alabama. Andrew's a trusted leader in the financial services field, and today he's here to share strategies with us about retirement planning. Now, it's probably no surprise that what's right for our money right now probably is not going to be the case 10 or 20 years from now. And so we're talking about the 5 main stages to your financial life. The third stage is really an important one. This is your pre-retirement years. So this is like people like me, Andrew. I'm 62, or would it be people even before me, like in their 50s?
Yes, absolutely. If you're 5 to 10 years out from retirement, this is the stage we're at, the last part of the journey, the last part of the race, and we got to get it right at the last part. We don't want to give up. We don't want to slow down. We want to run faster. So the last few years before retirement are so important to your financial success for the rest of your retirement. So here's some things that you need to take into consideration if you're a pre-retiree, you're 10 years out from retirement. The first is make sure that all debts except maybe a mortgage should be paid off at this point. No consumer debt, no car debt. We want to get rid of those debts. A mortgage at a very low interest rate is not the end of the world. Of course, it'd be nice to have everything paid for, but again, a mortgage, having it completely paid off when interest rates are now 2% for a 10-year mortgage is not that huge of a rush. Next is prioritize tax diversification. If all of your money is in a 401k or in an IRA that has never been taxed, that is not tax tax diversified. That's having all your eggs in one tax bucket. We want to make sure that if tax landscapes change in your retirement, which they will over a 20 to 30-year retirement, we want to make sure that you're prepared by having your taxes diversified, not just your investments diversified, your taxes diversified. We should have money in a Roth 401k, a Roth TSP. We should have money in a Roth IRA. We should have some money that's taxable. We should have money that is in multiple different areas of those tax buckets to make sure that if administrations change and tax landscapes change, that you'd be ready for it. And then it's maximizing your 401k by making sure that you take advantage of catch-up provisions. And this is one of the things we're working a lot with clients right now, is they have maybe $100,000, $200,000 sitting there in checking and savings, maybe from an inheritance, maybe from selling a home, and they're not max funding their Roth 401k at work. So what we're helping families do that are very close to retirement is take money out of their checking and savings accounts and push it into their Roth 401k or their Roth IRA so that it grows tax-free instead of taxable, and potentially the stable value fund that's a safe account inside your 401k actually probably earns more than your local savings account. And so there's a real win-win when we look at your financial plan as if it's a chessboard with all the chess pieces on the same board and see strategically what we need to move around.
Yeah, that's exciting to me because you're making, really good, valid decisions, mathematic decisions. So when would you say then is a good time for that financial checkup to make sure we are on the right track for retirement? How early does that begin?
I think at least 10 years from retirement would be ideal. Now, again, I just met with an individual, I can't make this up, yesterday, that is 80 days from retirement. Ooh. And I said, hey, at least it's not too late. You still had 80 days left. But I said, this is the perfect time to get a financial plan going into retirement because in just less than 6 months, you're going to be retired, which is great. So remember market cycles, and that's why it's so important to do this 10 years out. So many people tried to retire in the year of 2000. The dot-com crash was soon approaching. Then people tried to retire in 2008. Imagine if those families would have met with a financial advisor that specialized in retirement planning. Those families could potentially have been retired in 2008 despite the market collapse because they prepared for a market collapse. If you're right now riding all-time market highs in the stock market and you're going to retire in the year of 2022 or 2023 and you don't have a plan for a market pullback, then I would encourage you to get a new plan, to get a plan that prepares not only for good times, but bad times ahead too.
Right. Oh, wow. That's great. Great information. And I know you've experienced this with your retirees, so this is all coming from experience. So what can you tell us about making that transition, from our saving for retirement to now we're in retirement. We have to generate our own paycheck. We don't have that paycheck coming every 2 weeks anymore.
Well, I always joke that your football pads won't work in tennis practice.
Oh, yeah,
what got you here? Yeah, that's right. What got you here won't get you there. And what I mean by that is when you were actually probably still working when 2008 happened or 2000 happened, you were still working, saving money for your retirement. And when the market dropped, what did you do? Probably nothing. You probably got scared, right? Hopefully you didn't move your investments around, but you were dollar cost averaging, right? You were putting money into the stock market every year, and when the market dropped, you bought more at a lower price, and it worked out for you. The same thing happens in retirement, but the reverse actually occurs. So when you start taking money out systematically in retirement, reverse dollar cost averaging takes over. And what that means is if you retire in a period where the stock market goes down, sadly, your retirement may never recover. So if you're about to retire and we have a pullback in 2022 or 2023 and you're taking money from your retirement account, I know it sounds basic, but when you take that money out to spend it on the Alaskan vacation, it never recovers. And that is why it's so important to remember it wasn't Moses that got the Israelites to the promised land. It was Moses that got them out of Egypt, but it was Joshua that got them to the promised land. And so many times people say, well, I have a financial advisor. Of course I'm ready for retirement. Not necessarily. You might have a financial advisor that took you to the accumulation phase of retirement where you've accumulated a retirement plan, a nest egg, but that distribution phase, that retirement phase, that is so important. You want to make sure that you're prepared for that stage as well.
And Andrew, this is what you do. You guide people with this transition from their careers into retirement. I think so many people have questions about what they need to be doing. And believe me, there's a lot more to it, than just spending your savings, right? So tell us how you help your retirees retire.
Absolutely. So what we do is we sit down and have a 1-hour complimentary visit called our sleep study. So our sleep study has nothing to do with sleep apnea equipment. What we do is, and it's really important because our goal for every family is to help them sleep well at night in retirement. That's what we all want. We want to have potential peace of mind. We want to not have to worry about our investments all the time. And that's why we call it our sleep study. And that's why we called our firm Swan Capital, because that's our goal for every family. So it starts with looking at your income plan and making sure that you have a plan to make sure that you have a paycheck for the rest of your retirement. The next thing we look at is tax planning. If you have all your money in your 401k and you don't have an IRA exit strategy to things like Roth IRAs and tax-free investments, that's why we bring in a CPA to make sure that you have a tax strategy of taking money that's never been taxed and shifting it to money that will never again be taxed. And again, we can handle that all in our Swan Sleep Study, which is again a 1-hour complimentary visit. And to schedule that, all you have to do is call 1-800-848-8768. That's 1-800-848-8768. 8768.
And remember, you can find out even more about Andrew on his website. It's swan-capital.com. Capital, of course, with 2 A's. It's not the dome. It's capital. swan-capital.com. And Andrew and his team would love to help you build confidence in your retirement plan. That is their goal for you, to help you sleep well at night. And we thank you so much for listening to What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNary. His office is right here on the Gulf Coast. And today we are talking right now about the 5 financial stages of life. The last 2 financial stages of life happen during retirement. You've got your early retirement years where you're out there enjoying that bucket list that you've made. But here's the deal. How do you create a spending strategy so you're not enjoying those, early years of retirement and not blowing through your savings too quickly, Andrew?
So how do we do that is to have and do everything on your bucket list. What you have to do is have a 3-bucket strategy. What we do is we start off by having the bucket set aside that's labeled years 1 through 5. And that's so important because of the reason I just talked about. If we have a market pullback in 2022 or 2023 and you don't have a bucket that's labeled years 1 through 5 income that's tucked away, then you're dependent upon the stock market every day for your retirement income through those ups and downs. We want to have a bucket that's set aside that cannot lose money, that's typically guaranteed, that's going to pay out income for you to make sure that years 1 through 5 that you're covered. Then we have bucket 5 through 10. Now, 5 through 10 is a bucket that we know that we can put into the garage and not touch for 5 years. Why is that so important? Because if we know we're not going to touch it for 5 years, we can take more risk with it. We can lock it up a little bit because we know we're not going to touch it for 5 years. And that bucket, years from 5 to 10, will give us all that income through, again, some very important years where you may have a knee surgery, where you're a few years into retirement and you've already traveled to Europe a few times. You've already taken the road trip, but you know you're going to need income years 5 through 10 with that bucket. Then the last bucket is 10 plus years. This bucket is very important to fight against inflation. That's its whole objective, is to put this bucket aside so that when 10 years pass, a decade passes, and things are getting more expensive, and we already talked about how things are increasing in double digits in many categories, and Social Security is going to potentially raise Social Security by 6%. We have this bucket that's been growing for 10 years. It hasn't been touched. It's been just growing for the future. That will give us our permission slip to spend years 1 through 10 with peace of mind and confidence, because we have this bucket set aside 10 years and beyond that's fighting against inflation.
Okay, that's great. Great strategies there. Now, when do you start talking about estate and legacy goal planning with your retirees, Andrew?
Well, the nice thing is, Luann, and we've had Scott on the show, is we have Scott Malik. He is an estate planning attorney that's VA accredited, and he specializes in helping families put together their basic legal documents, which is 2 powers of attorney, medical and financial, a living will to pull the plug or not to pull the plug, a last will and testament to say, hey, judge, if I can't make it, this is what I want to happen. And then if you have a home that's owned solely in your name, he'll talk to you about a life estate or a trust. Because if you have your home owned in your name or you and your spouse's name and something happens to both of you, that could become a probatable asset. And Scott will talk through what documents that you need to make sure that you avoid or eliminate probate for your family.
So, all right, we have to take a quick break. But Andrew, again, let's give out your information so people can call you or go in and see you.
Absolutely. So our phone number is 1-800-848-8768. And when you come in, I'll try to give you a walkthrough of what that happens. When you schedule a visit with us, Suzette's going to send you a 2-page questionnaire. That 2-page questionnaire is to share with us in a brief detail what's going on with your financial circumstance. And we'll sit down with you. We'll answer all the questions that you can muster. And we'll go through that 2-page questionnaire together. And I'll say, hey, you're doing a lot of things really well, but there's a few things that you need to address. And then we'll hand you back your questionnaire if you like. And we'll tell you, look it up on Google. Tell your previous advisor how to fix this, or hire us to help you with these few items that you need to address before retirement. So again, give us a call to take us up on that 1-hour complimentary visit that we call our sleep study by calling 1-800-848-8768. That's 1-800-848-8768.
What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair. We'll be right back with the rest of our show. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is What Your Money Would Say with Andrew McNair. I'm Luann Fulmer. So we always talk about the questions that you get all the time about retirement. So I thought it would be fun to open up our What Your Money Would Say mailbag and go over some common retirement questions. Are you up for that today?
Oh, I love this part.
Okay. All right. Me too. So our first question, this one is from Jeff, and he's out of Pensacola here. And he said, I just found out I'll be receiving $100,000 from a life insurance policy after my grandpa passes away. I'm stunned by that amount because I did not expect it. So now I have 2 questions, Andrew. What should I do with this money? And I really want to be able to do something like this for my own grandkids one day. So how can I make that happen?
Oh, I think that's great that they want to keep the legacy going. I think the first thing that we all need to remember is that life insurance proceeds most likely are tax-free for your situation. So we need to prioritize keeping it that way, keeping it tax-free. So one of the first advice that I would give to you is make sure that you've max funded your Roth IRA for this year. After you've done that, make sure that your HR allows you to max fund your Roth 401k. See if a Roth 401k is an option. Maybe just a 401k is an option. But see if a Roth 401k is an option. And if that's the case, what I would do is actually take a larger percentage out of your paycheck to max fund your Roth 401k at work. The next thing I would move on is to your HSA, your health savings account. Again, that can be utilized tax-free. So you want to max fund your Roth IRA, your Roth 401k, and your HSA. And then if you've done all of those things, then we could talk about maybe setting up a different life insurance plan for your family. But I would start by prioritizing all the tax-free buckets that you have available to you first.
Okay. This next one has to do with insurance as well. This is Rob. Rob is from Milton, and he says, Andrew, I have a good amount of life insurance, about $800,000 in a 401k and a long-term care policy already set up. Am I going to be okay for retirement?
Well, I think the only way that you'll understand what you need is if you've completed one of our spending plans. And we talked about that earlier on the show. Is I've sat down with many families and I said, when you retire and I need to put a retirement check in your mailbox to last you every day for the rest of that month, and in retirement, how much does that monthly check need to be? And so many times I get this blank stare, and a spouse looks to another spouse for support, and they both don't have the answer. I think it's really important to go through a spending plan so you can say, all right, we need $7,500 a month to live comfortably, to actually take those road trips that we want to in retirement. And so that's a good part. And then what we do after that part is we take your Social Security, future pensions into consideration, and then we see if there's a gap. And let's say that you have $3,500 a month as the gap between your Social Security and what you need. That's when we're talking about how do you make sure that $800,000 will last. And many times $800,000 can if it's structured properly. However, if you only just put it in a CD at 1%, 1% on $800,000, $8,000 a year is not going to cut it if you're $3,500 in the hole every month. That money is going to run out fairly quickly. So you need to have an income plan to make sure that $800,000 lasts.
Okay, very good. All right, here's another one for you. We're taking questions right now from our What Your Money Would Say mailbag. And here's another question for you, Andrew. This is from Chris out of Cantonment. And he said, I'm 56 right now, and I really want to have $1 million saved before I retire. I'm doing a really good job saving into my 401k, but I can't ever seem to get a lot of cash set aside. How can I do a better job about building my emergency fund?
Well, Chris is from where I'm from, so that's cool. Well, Chris, I think the first thing you have to do is radical revisions. And that may sound silly what I'm about to recommend, but to take a journal for 1 week and just note what you're spending your money on. And people say, well, that would be crazy. I spend a lot of money through the week. That's the point, is to spend and take note of everything that you're spending. Because when you do that for 1 week's time and then you review it, you'll say, wow, I spend a lot of money on frivolous things that I really don't need. And if I were just to be a little bit more careful with every dollar that I spend, I would accrue that emergency fund that I need fairly quickly. And again, emergency fund just needs to be 3 to 6 months of liquid savings that's set aside in cash or cash equivalents for an emergency. We don't worry about making a lot of interest on that money. We just want to have 3 to 6 months set aside so while we're saving for retirement, we don't have a hiccup where we have to go backwards and dig ourselves a hole in debt.
So, Andrew, if people want to ask you their own questions, let's give out your information so they can give you a call, maybe leave some of their questions with you.
Of course. Now, if you're listening and you say, Andrew, I would have some questions I would love for you to share on the air, all you have to do is email our office at info@swan-capital.com. That's info at swan, like the bird, SWAN, -capital.com. So info@swan-capital.com. We'll be happy to answer your question live on the air. Now, again, if you're saying, Andrew, but I have some questions that I really want to ask you personally about my retirement and see if me and our family are prepared for retirement, all you have to do is call 1-800-848-8768. That's 1-800-848-8768. And we will sit down 1 hour answering all the questions that you can muster, like these mailbox questions. And then what we'll do is make sure that you are retirement ready by giving you a report card. And hopefully you'll get straight A's on your path towards retirement.
So that website, swan-capital.com, swan-capital.com. And then if you, like I said, or like Andrew said, if you want to write in your own questions, info@swan-capital.com. And so Andrew's offering you a chance to come in and visit with him personally. He is local. I want to make sure you know that. He grew up right here in Pensacola, and he and his wife Natasha are building a life here. Andrew's going to be around for a long time, and he has experience, and it's his passion to help retirees. So we thank you so much for listening. This is What Your Money Would Say. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Andrew McNair. We're going through our What Your Money Would Say mailbag questions. I have another one for you, Andrew.
I'm ready.
Okay, this is from Greg, and he is from Fairhope. I'm getting married later this year. I have 2 sons, and my fiance has 4 kids from her first marriage. I don't want to hurt their feelings, but I'm not going to split up my estate 6 ways. I want my money and my estate to go to my boys, like we've always planned. But to keep peace, would it make sense to get a separate life insurance policy so her kids could get something after I'm gone too?
Now, your situation you might think is unique, but we deal with that situation literally probably once a month. And that's why we have Scott Malik is an estate planning attorney. He knows how to navigate the waters with a second marriage. He knows how to navigate that when there's kids involved. And when you have a Scott Malik on your team, you have an estate planning attorney, it's really important to make sure that both members of the family are heard and they understand their wishes. And sometimes there's just a communication communication problem. Like maybe they even want the same things, but they haven't had that conversation in a safe spot, like in our conference room. And so we talk about what they all want to have, and we make sure that their legal documents do exactly what they want. And that's why it's so important to make sure your will or trust documents are read over, maybe even a second time by an estate planning attorney, to make sure that they're going to do exactly what you want. I had a situation pretty recently where a family actually was having their home that they had received from a previous marriage that they wanted to keep in the family. They wanted their son to live in that home. But when the new spouse came into the picture, unfortunately, the new spouse, if she passes away, that spouse will have no place to live after she passes away. And that's a real shame when you have to kick out your stepfather out of the home. Yes, you'll have a place to live, but now your stepfather doesn't have a place to live. And that's why legal documents are so important. So the life insurance idea is a good idea. It's something that definitely we can have a conversation about, but having the legal documents is what's essential. And that's why we have Scott Malik, an estate planning attorney, in our office.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up our mailbag questions for today, but we'll do that again sometime, Andrew. I always love doing this. But I want to ask you this, since we have some time. What are some of the questions that retirees are coming to you about here lately, like this past week, past couple of weeks? What are their concerns, Andrew?
Well, I think the three that are on the top of mind of many of the families I meet with are inflation, they're talking about taxes, and they're talking about a potential bubble that I think a lot of us are seeing in the housing market as well as in the stock market. And so I want to tackle one of those is taxes. This is a perfect time, and this is something I'm doing personally, is if this is a time to sell the property that you don't plan on actually building on. Maybe you have a lot that you bought, but you haven't got around to building it. This may be the perfect time to sell it. Why? Because of taxes. If you're looking at selling something, this may be one of the best times, because if capital gains go up next year, you're going to wish you sold it this year while market prices are high, while tax rates are low. This is the perfect time to sell something, because you can lock in a capital gains rate of anywhere from 0 to 20%. And again, many estimates is it's going to be as high as 30% for some families next year. So I think it's really important to think about taxes going into retirement. Next is inflation. The conversation we're having is if you have what I call lazy money, money that's sitting on the couch, not keeping up with inflation, we're going to need to exchange lazy money for hard-working money. Because if your inflation rate personally, because of what you're spending your money is going up 5%, 6%, but your money's only making 1%, you're losing purchasing power over time. The last part is if there is a bubble in real estate or in the stock market by many measurements is overvalued. You want to make sure that if you're retiring in the next few years that you have protected a large part of your nest egg that you're going to rely on for retirement income. And so those are the three concerns that many of our retirees are having coming in, and we can help you address those. There are strategies that we can employ to make sure we push away that risk as much as possible. Now, if you say, Andrew, those are my same concerns, what do I do? How do I speak with you about my concerns on an individual basis? That's why we set up a 1-hour visit with families called our sleep study. It's a discovery visit to see what your questions are, to make sure that if you have those three concerns, how can you employ strategies to try to reduce those risks in your financial lives? All you have to do is call 1-800-848-8768. That's 1-800-848-8768. I look forward to seeing you soon on the next episode of What Your Money Would Say. Thank you for listening.